The year is 2014. Achievement Hunter's popularity is at an all-time high. They were so profitable for the company that anything that anyone said that was remotely funny or could be considered a catchphrase was immediately slapped onto a shirt and sent out for production for the public to buy. Despite this weird phase of marketing from Rooster Teeth, Xray Vav was a similar product of its time. Having never really done a 2D animated show before, Xray Vav acted as a safe experiment to test the waters. It gave fans something that they were familiar with while not risking much in the process. This was especially prevalent in the fact that the first season of the show was only given 4 episodes. The show takes place in the city of, there was never a name given to the city in which they protect. The plot revolves around 2 wannabe superheroes named Xray and Vav who strive to become the world's greatest heroes. Unfortunately for them, they lack the means to do so and more times than not find themselves doing things like saving kittens from trees. Fortunately for them, they run into an engineer named Hilda who notices how willing, but more importantly, desperate the 2 are to become heroes, thus making them the perfect lab rats to test her equipment on. She gives the 2 their own costumes, allowing them to use superpowers, and the show proceeds from there. In terms of the antagonists, Season 1 primarily focuses on the core pirate and his oh-so-original goal to take over the world. It's an extremely basic and unoriginal plot that luckily for the season only has 4 episodes to it. The main draw and appeal to this show definitely isn't the plot, nor do I think it's the characters in the traditional sense of how you would say that. The main draw to this season, as well as the reason it was created, was because of how popular Achievement Hunter was. The plot's not particularly interesting and most of the characters don't have any real sort of depth behind their jokes. But the reason this season worked was the ability for fans of Achievement Hunter to look at the characters and the jokes that they made and say to themselves, I get that reference. I know what Let's Play that's from. Oh, Ray says that all the time. Oh, Gavin does this all the time. That is the driving force and energy that fueled this show. I know that because I was one of them. I understood all the jokes and references that were being made and found it funny and thought it was a great show because of it. However, that is ultimately the double-edged sword that this show faced. Because the characters don't have much depth to them and because most of the show's entertainment value comes from references, if you don't get them, then you likely aren't going to think much of the show. Its entire creation was not only a product of its time, but also made for fans of that specific era. And it's not like most media where to understand something you go to the source from where it originated. Here, many of the jokes and characters are just personas and shticks that were created across hundreds of videos. If you go into the show knowing nothing and want to watch and understand where everything came from, well, that requires their Minecraft Let's Plays, WWE, achievement guides, and even still, it's not a, I understand where it came from, thus I can now find it funny. Xray Vav is a joke on top of a joke. You kind of have to have enjoyed the Let's Play and the videos and the cast as a whole to fully appreciate and have a good time with the show. Anyone who comes across the series and isn't an avid Achievement Hunter fan likely won't be wowed by anything the show offers specifically this season. Now, usually that type of speech is something that I would have ended the video with. However, due to its unique existence and how it's viewed, I felt it necessary to get that out of the way before I started going more in depth. So let's talk about the characters. Xray and Vav. Vav seems to be the one who's been given a bit more likability of the 2. Xray mainly just wants things immediately. He wants to be known as the greatest superheroes right now. He's a very impatient person. Vav, on the other hand, is much more willing to slowly climb his way up the ladder to the spot of recognition. Both are inherently flawed individuals. Because Xray is impatient, that makes his actions very risky as he doesn't think things through before he's already acted upon it. Vav, on the other hand, likes to use strategies and planning when it comes to the scenarios they're in. This is also flawed due to how complicated and convoluted the strategies tend to be. Both are pretty much polar opposites of each other, but that's usually how successful duos work. Then you have the completely original character made for the show itself, Hilda. She's not a past joke or reference of any sort, her existence is exclusive to the series. She's an incredibly advanced engineer whose intelligence is unmatched compared to anyone else's in the series. She doesn't really spend too much time interacting with people of lower intelligence than herself, unless it can benefit her in some way, case in point Xray Vav. She's a very straightforward and cynical individual. Most conversations and interactions that don't involve her creations tend to be a nuisance for her. Because of this attitude, she lacked friends for most of her life. Because of that, you have her creation, Orf. She's very upbeat and happy, and as stated, was created due to Hilda's lack of friends. I've never come to a decision as to whether or not I like her. On one hand, she's incredibly adorable and naive, which provides for some good laughs. But on the other hand, she's annoying. She's not a main character, so it's very restricted as to how often she has dialogue, but the moments she does, I want it to stop. Rusty is the only other original character. He seemingly had a lot to his past, from fighting in Vietnam to having questionable business partners. His past was definitely much more fulfilling than his present. Now he's homeless and drunk, and that's really it. Weirdly enough, I'd say he's the second most useful character just below Hilda. He's unpredictable, and I wouldn't rely on him too much, but his past has kind of trained him to be an all-around guy and be useful in many scenarios. Now, in terms of the voice acting in this show, it is accumulatively less than average. Some do a pretty decent job and others are on the lower end. Both Gavin and Ray do an okay job at best. I'm not exactly going to fault these two for their acting because they aren't actors, and this show, like I've said before, is very unique. I can't imagine Gavin and Ray having been the driving force for getting this show made. It seems more like a team or group at Rooster Teeth saw the opportunity to try something new in terms of animation and content, and this was the result. They decided to make a show based off two of the more popular personalities, and what? Gavin and Ray aren't going to voice their own characters' personas? So I don't want to fault the acting on their part too much, but anyone who's not in the know would clearly take notice that it's not very good. Probably the worst performance comes from Jeff as the core pirate. He's done a pretty good job on Red vs. Blue as Griff, but accents, needless to say, are not his specialty. On the opposite side of the spectrum, however, Hilda and Rusty's voice actors, Lindsay and Gray, do an extremely good job. These two, I am constantly impressed as to how good they are at voice acting. When you line up each of the characters that they voice, it's impressive as to how different they each sound. Now, it's not like their vocal range that's made their acting good in this show. Their acting ability is what made the acting good. I just wanted to compliment them where I thought it was necessary. On a side note, some of the dialogue just didn't feel right. Xray Vav's personalities of course mirror their real-life counterpart, but scripting that just didn't work in some cases. Gavin's weird Britishisms more times than not don't come across as natural, simply because it's not. It felt more like an American putting in where they think Britishisms would be. It's hard to capture and put into script real-life personalities that much of the audience knew, and I would say it did a pretty decent job at it. There were many awkward attempts, but it wasn't all bad. It just happened enough times to where I took notice of it. But to rehash what I said in the beginning, the show is really unique, not only being a product of its time, but also being made for the people at that time. Due to this, not many newer fans of Rooster Teeth can go to this and fully enjoy the series. It falls in this weird place as well as what audience it went for. The show swears and does things that doesn't make it a kid's show, but it's much too kid-like for the average adult to really enjoy it. Like I said, it had a specific audience it went for, and it was really only for them. I, being one of them, watching the show when it was released, had an incredibly good time watching the series and enjoying everything it offered. But a couple years later, and to anyone else, well, I guess it's too bad. But season 1 is still only 4 episodes, and their quest to become the greatest superheroes wouldn't end there. After the success that the first season was met with, season 2 offered much more this time around, now with 10 episodes to its name. It premiered about 10 months after the first season had ended, which tends to be the usual for Rooster Teeth shows. This time around, after having stopped the core pirates' attempt at world domination, both Xray and Vav are now well-known heroes amongst their town. However, there is a newcomer that has taken the spotlight away from them, and they're not having it. Mogar is once again a reference to another Achievement Hunter alter ego. He serves as an antagonist for most of the season, just mainly in part to the fact that Xray and Vav don't like him. He's got his own motives, and I don't think any viewer would actually say he's the bad guy, but what else do you call the character that the heroes fight and don't like? His goal is to find his mother and the person who took her. Anyone who gets in his way is nothing more than a mere obstacle that must be moved. I enjoyed him for what he was worth, but there's not much special about him other than he's a good fighter. But his character was definitely dumbed down for the show.
Those fiends! I knew the blue one and the green one were nothing but trouble. Mogar,
Whoa.
he's pretty cool. And then you got the Xray Vav, and she's like, he's a fucking idiot. He can't read. He can barely speak English.
Illiterate.
He speaks like a caveman.
Illiterate.
Hey, I got this funny character, Mogar. He's kind of like a warrior guy. Me, Mogar. Me, dumb. Hey, thanks a lot.
The real antagonist of the season is the Mad King. He had a very small and minor role in the first season, but this time around the writers decided that he would make a much better villain than what the core pirate had previously offered. His plans are much more thought out. He's not as physically threatening of a villain as he is psychologically threatening. He really tries to get into the minds of the heroes, and for the most part, he succeeds in doing so. He is ultimately the reason Mogar is a villain throughout most of the season. His ability to manipulate people's emotions puts him in a much bigger threat role. It's a change from what last season offered, but his goal is ultimately the exact same. It's just an elaborate business ploy to eventually be controlling everyone and conquering the world. The plot hasn't gotten that much better in terms of the villain's goals, but there's so much more happening that it's not as noticeable. There are a few new characters that get introduced, but by far my favorite has to be Ash. She's voiced by Jessica DeChico, who's an actual voice actor, and in this type of show, it's not hard to separate the professionals from the employees. Her performance is arguably the best in the entire series. She plays a character named Ash, who is a journalist for the town's newspaper. She's obsessed with getting a story, and her more popular ones tend to be about Mogar. This annoys Xray and Vav, mostly Xray, to the point of going directly to her to complain. Vav instantly falls for her, and she acts as his love interest for the season. What I really liked here, and kind of realized because of it, is Xray and Vav's identities aren't a mystery. In most media, the hero's face would be hidden under a mask of some kind. They wouldn't want risking their personal life with their hero life. But here, they want the attention. They want the notoriety. I mean, part of the joke is that Xray and Vav are their hero names, but it seems to be their real names as well. We know Gavin and Ray are their actors' names, but inside the show, it doesn't seem like they have a secret identity either. They don't try to hide it, and so that's made the relationship between Vav and Ash interesting. In this Lois Lane Superman relationship, there are already no secrets. His true name and face are already known, so it's just this awkward hero trying to hit on a girl while she's just busy trying to write a story. In fact, it's almost hard to notice because of how nice she is. She's almost a terrible person because of that. She's always using Vav to try and get a scoop on another story while this poor guy's just trying to date you. You can look over the fact that she's married to her work, and so she didn't notice Vav hitting on her, but she's still using him. In the end, Vav doesn't even really get the girl. He gets a peck on the cheek, but that's it. He's been gushing over her the entire season, saved her life from what he thought was lava, and once everything subsided, just a small peck. And considering that this was the last season of the show, that's how their relationship ends, or I should say their lack of relationship ended. That's more of a storyline that I would have liked to have seen differently. But Jessica does an amazing job voicing her, and despite the flaw that is Ash's dedication to her job, she is by far my favorite character in the series.
I'd rather be unemployed than a reporter who uses people to get to a story.
Then you have some more minor characters like Dragonface and Flint Cole. Once again, these are two references and only appear in a small number of episodes. There are a few characters that constantly like to pop up in RT Productions in different versions, most notably Flint Cole and Kevin the drug dealer. Both are in this series, but Kevin's only mentioned by name.
You're not Kevin. What do you guys want?
Flint's an investigator playing alongside the backstory that Achievement Hunter gave him.
That'd be a cool name, Flint Cole.
Would it
You'd be like
though?
a private, yeah, you'd be like an international private investigator,
You'd
man,
have
a
to
mystery
be black,
type.
though, right?
I don't think so. You're racist.
You think, oh, that's not racist? You can't have a white guy named Flint Cole.
He's the most true to form of them all, I would say. They released a shirt based off him, but part of the mystique of his character was broken because of how much of a white guy he looked like. After Michael hammered in that he had to be black because of the name Flint, the guy on the shirt could have been Elvis or any 50s greaser. And in RWBY, he's not even a private eye. But here, his name is Flint Cole, he's a PI, and he's black. The only thing that was missing to make him even more true to inspiration was a soda line.
Flint Cole. He'd have his own soda, too. It'd be Flint Cola.
Dragonface is the other new character. I hate him. I somehow found him more annoying than Orf. His entire character plays around the fact that when Carrie did Let's Plays with Achievement Hunter, they'd always sort of treat him like the baby. Inexperienced in the way they went about things, and it came off like he was a sidekick. So it's very true to form for what his character's hyperbolized self is. But my god, did he annoy me. He's like that younger sibling who keeps saying and doing things that they find hilarious, but you know they're just stupid and annoying. Maybe it's just not my sense of humor, but Dragonface was my least favorite part of the series. I will admit though, him losing the fight to The Rock was legitimately a funny moment.
Help! The
Brock's gonna be pinned!
The animation, I can't really tell how it changed, if it changed at all. I really liked how the first season looked, and I didn't really think that anything needed to be different. I'm sure some small things had gotten polished, but overall it looks just as cartoonish as ever. I mentioned how last season was really only made for the fans, and that holds true. But what this season did definitely open the series up to a more mainstream audience. It's not gonna hook everyone in fact I would say it would only grab a small number into the show. Considering that most of the jokes yet again come from references, it's just one-upped itself for fans of last season. New viewers I'm sure would be confused as hell as to why Mogar's mom was a cow. Even by cartoon logic, that doesn't make any sense. But with the addition of Ash and a more comprehensive story this time around, if one of the seasons were to hook you in, it'd be this one. I will say probably the most unfortunate thing about the show was the audience it went for. Had the swearing and more noticeable adult humor been removed, I think the series would have been one of RT's best. Yes, that's the type of humor that's in the vein of how Rooster Teeth likes to do things, but the language and adult jokes happen so rarely that it wouldn't have really affected anything. The show is already incredibly kid-friendly that I think if they had just went headfirst into making this a kid's show, it could have had a bigger audience. I didn't watch this thinking it was an adult cartoon, it felt like anything I'd see on TV on Saturday morning. Unfortunately, this was the last season the show would have, leaving the ending ambiguous for what would happen next. Fans even now ask for the return of the show, but that'll never happen. Ray had already left Rooster Teeth by the time the second season was airing, and he's expressed how he was happy with how the second season had ended, and he's not interested in doing any more. So Xray Vav's journey ends there with only 14 episodes and 2 short one-offs. It was a fun series while it lasted. Fans can continue to cherish how they got to see their favorite personas given a story despite how ridiculous that seems. It was entertaining, funny, and stupid all at the same time. So for fans during that era, let's stop.